The city glows, like it's pretending to be kind. Up here, above the traffic and the sirens, people sip champagne as if gravity doesn't apply to them. Ilara moves between tables, her steps quiet, her smile practiced. Every "yes, sir" hides a story no one wants to hear. Tonight, the air hums with laughter that doesn't belong to her world. At the corner table, Alexander Vale raises his glass, his voice sharp and amused. He doesn't see her. Not really. To him, she's background noise with an accent. But words have weight, even when whispered by the quiet ones. And when she finally answers him, the city will listen. Silence can weigh more than words. For a heartbeat, no one moves. Ilara feels every gaze press against her like heat. But she doesn't bow. Her voice was steady, not loud, just real. Alexander shifts in his chair, suddenly aware of the stillness he created. His laughter turns hollow. The city below hums like nothing happened, but up here, something has cracked. She collects the empty glasses with the same calm grace, her hands trembling only when no one can see. Dignity isn't loud, it's the sound of someone refusing to disappear. When the shift ends, the laughter returns, cautious, rehearsed. The world always finds a way to move on. Ilara steps into the service corridor, the noise fading behind the metal door. Her breath trembles, her pulse loud in the narrow hallway. She thinks about her brother, about rent, about how one small moment could cost her everything. But pride isn't something you return for refunds. In the dim mirror above the sink, she sees herself. Not broken, just tired of being small. Outside, the night feels different, cleaner somehow. The city lights blink like they're alive, watching. Ilara walks down the alley behind the restaurant, the sound of traffic mixing with the clatter of her footsteps. Somewhere high above, Alexander Vale returns to his world of glass and privilege. He'll forget her name by morning, she thinks. But not the silence. Not that kind of silence. Some moments don't fade. They wait. The train hums beneath the city like a heartbeat. Ilara leans against the window, the skyline receding behind her. Somewhere in that glass tower, a man who never noticed her now sits awake, wondering why her voice still echoes in his head. But she isn't thinking about him. She's thinking about tomorrow, about her brother's tuition, about keeping her dignity intact. The world measures worth in money, but sometimes the richest moment is the one where you finally refuse to be small. Morning arrives without apology. For Ilara, it means coffee gone cold and another uniform freshly pressed. But there's a different quiet in her chest now. Something heavy, but cleansing. She replays his laughter not with anger but with clarity. People like him never expect their reflection to speak back. And yet, she did. Outside, the city begins its daily performance, pretending not to notice the cracks in its own glass. Ilara ties her apron and walks out the door, head high. Dignity doesn't shout. It endures. Across the city, Alexander Vale wakes to silence. No boardroom calls yet, no emails urgent enough to matter. He scrolls through his phone, pausing at a video. Someone recorded that moment. His joke, her reply, the frozen laughter. The caption burns. Billionaire mocked Waitress. Gets humbled. He stares, jaw tightening, pride curdling into disbelief. For the first time in years, his own reflection looks foreign. The mirror doesn't lie, but it rarely forgives. At the restaurant, whispers travel faster than wine orders. Staff talks softly about what happened, glancing toward the door as if the memory might return. Ilara keeps working, calm, steady, untouchable. Some smile at her with quiet respect, others with pity. But the truth doesn't need applause. She just clears tables, polishes glass, and breathes. Power doesn't come from being loud. It comes from not needing permission to exist. Meanwhile, Alexander's world cracks in small, embarrassing ways. Calls go unanswered. His investors joke about the video. His assistant avoids his gaze. He tells himself it's a blip, a misunderstanding. But when he hears her voice again, that quiet strength replayed through the phone, something unsettles him. It's not guilt at first. It's recognition. The sound of someone unafraid of what he's built his whole life to protect. That night, Alara returns home late. The city outside her window hums like a restless dream. She turns on the small radio, letting a soft ballad fill the silence. Somewhere across the skyline, a man who once laughed at her can't sleep. He doesn't know why. Alara closes her eyes, the song wrapping around her like peace. Tomorrow will come, hard and bright, but for now she lets herself feel proud of one simple truth. She didn't let them break her. Morning again, but this time it feels lighter. Alara walks through the city's noise, the air sharp with the scent of roasted coffee and wet pavement. People rush past, lost in their own battles. She carries a thermos and a quiet smile. It's not about pride anymore. It's about peace. Somewhere far above, Alexander Vale signs deals and stares through glass walls that don't keep out regret. The world hasn't changed, but something inside both of them has. Across town, Alexander's penthouse glows like a museum of success, beautiful but empty. His phone buzzes with messages he doesn't read. He stands before a mirror, tie in hand, unable to meet his own eyes. Every reflection feels like a question he can't answer. The world outside keeps rewarding him for things that no longer matter. He pours coffee, but it tastes bitter, like the silence that's been following him since that night. That evening, Alara and Noah eat dinner together. Rice, beans, and laughter that feels earned. He talks about his scholarship dreams, about wanting to study architecture. She listens, eyes shining with quiet pride. Every spoonful of food, every shared smile, feels like a small victory against the world that tried to shrink her. For the first time in a long while, she feels rich. Elsewhere, Alexander attends a charity gala, the kind of event designed to make the powerful feel kind. Crystal chandeliers, polite applause, empty smiles. He shakes hands, poses for cameras, and tries to ignore the sound of his own echo. Every laugh feels rehearsed. Every compliment feels thin. And then, through the crowd, a faint memory. Her voice, her tone. He turns sharply, searching, but it's just a passing waitress offering champagne. Later that night, he drives alone through the city. Past the lights, the noise, the billboards selling the life he already owns. He doesn't know where he's going until the car stops in front of the restaurant. It's closed now, the rooftop dark. He sits there, staring at the sign reflected in his windshield. For the first time, the silence feels honest. Maybe that's where change begins, in the moment you finally run out of excuses. Fate doesn't always knock. Sometimes it just opens the same door twice. When Alara reads that her brother's scholarship sponsor will attend the ceremony, she doesn't think much of it. Just another name, another headline. But names have echoes. Somewhere downtown, Alexander Vale rehearses a speech about opportunity and community. The same words he's spent years buying, not feeling. By evening, they'll share the same room again. No longer Waitress and Billionaire, but something more dangerous. Truth and guilt, face to face. Alexander steps onto the stage to polite applause. His speech is perfect, polished, confident, hollow. But as his eyes scan the crowd, something stirs. A familiar stillness, a face he's tried not to remember. Alara, sitting quietly beside her brother, watching him the way truth watches a lie. Patiently, the microphone feels heavier in his hand. His words start to stumble, sincerity breaking through the cracks of habit. For the first time in his life, he's not sure who's judging whom. After the ceremony, the crowd dissolves into polite chatter and applause. Alara stands by the refreshment table, holding 2 paper cups of punch. She feels his presence before she sees him. That practiced stillness, the sound of expensive shoes slowing down. She turns, and there he is. No glass walls, no laughter. Just a man and his guilt. For a moment, neither speaks. Sometimes, the most powerful apology isn't spoken. It's the silence that asks permission to exist. He tries to speak. Something about respect, misunderstanding, regret. The words stumble. Clumsy, too small for what he feels. Alara listens, her face unreadable. It's about what you see when you look down. The sentence lands softly, but it hits harder than any public shame. For a second, his entire empire feels paper thin. And in that stillness, something inside him finally bends. When the night ends, Alara and Noah step out into the cool air. The city hums again, unaware that something profound just shifted. Inside, Alexander remains by the podium, staring at the empty chairs. For the first time in years, he feels small in a way that doesn't hurt. Just honest. He doesn't chase her. Some lessons aren't meant to be owned. They're meant to be remembered. News spreads faster than change. By morning, photos from the scholarship event flood social media, the billionaire standing awkwardly beside the waitress he once mocked. Commentators call it redemption. Alara calls it noise. She's not interested in being anyone's headline. But Alexander can't look away. Every repost, every caption drags him back to that night, to that sentence. It's about what you see when you look down. For the first time, he looks down and sees himself. At the restaurant, Alara works through another long day. Customers smile politely, unaware of her story. Clarice keeps watching her, protective now in small, quiet ways. A journalist calls for comment. She hangs up. The world wants to make her a symbol, but she just wants peace. Her dignity isn't for sale, and her story isn't theirs to rewrite. Still, part of her wonders, what does redemption look like for someone like him? Alexander decides to face what he broke. He arrives at the restaurant unannounced. No entourage, no cameras. The same staff who once smiled from fear now glance in cautious recognition. When he asks for a table, his voice is lower, stripped of command. Alara sees him approach, heart steady. Some moments, she realizes, are not for revenge. They're for truth. He apologizes, not with rehearsed words, but with the clumsy honesty of someone who finally understands what he's done. His voice trembles once. He tells her he's donated to the scholarship fund, not as penance, but because he believes in people like her now. She listens, silent, every second a test of sincerity. When she finally speaks, it isn't forgiveness, it's freedom. I hope one day you stop needing to buy goodness, she says softly. The silence that follows is no longer painful. It's real. When he leaves, the night air feels different. No one claps. No one films. Just two people who met on opposite ends of a wound, now walking away a little lighter. Alara exhales, her reflection framed in the glass. Behind her, the city sparkles. The same skyline, but somehow softer. Dignity doesn't erase pain. It redeems it. And sometimes that's enough. Redemption doesn't arrive with applause. It shows up quietly, long after the crowd has stopped caring. A week passes. The city keeps spinning, unaware that two lives have turned on their axes. Elara works her shifts as always, but the way she moves has changed. Lighter somehow, like the air finally belongs to her. She greets customers with a softness that doesn't bend anymore. Her laughter, once careful, now sounds like freedom. Across town, Alexander deletes the last article about himself. His reflection no longer feels like a mask he must polish. He sits in silence and lets the world move without him. For the first time, that feels right. Alexander's days stretch differently now. He walks instead of being driven. He listens instead of speaking. The boardroom still obeys him, but he no longer fills the silence with his own voice. There's something sacred in restraint, something he'd never known until she taught it to him without meaning to. The world still calls him powerful, but he's learning a new definition. Power, he realizes, is the courage to feel small and still do better anyway. Elara sits at her kitchen table late one evening. Bills spread before her, pen poised over a list. But the weight doesn't crush her anymore. Every number tells a story of what she survived, not what she owes. Noah hums in the background, sketching blueprints for his architecture project. The sound steadies her. She thinks about Alexander sometimes. Not with anger, but with quiet curiosity. Change, she decides, is real only when it stays unseen. Maybe that's what he's learning too. A month passes before Alexander visits his parents' grave. No photographers, no entourage. Just him, a bouquet of wildflowers, and the sound of wind through the trees. He kneels, unsure what to say. Maybe the silence between him and the dead isn't so different from the silence she gave him. Heavy, cleansing, deserved. He doesn't pray for forgiveness. He just whispers thank you. And for the first time, it feels enough. That night, somewhere between skyscrapers and small apartments, two people rest easier. Elara finishes her tea and turns off the radio. Alexander sits by his window, city lights flickering across his face. They'll never speak again, but they don't need to. Some stories end quietly, not with closure, but with understanding. Dignity remains her crown, humility his redemption. And in a city that forgets almost everything, the silence between them will always remember. Time has a quiet way of softening even the sharpest memories. Months have passed since the night that changed both their lives. The world, as it always does, has moved on. New scandals, new stories, new noise. But for Elara, peace has settled in the corners of her days. She wakes before sunrise, still takes the same train, still wears the same worn shoes. Yet, everything feels lighter. Dignity, she's learned, doesn't shout to be remembered. It just stays, like a melody you can't quite name, but still hum to yourself when the world gets loud. Sometimes, she wonders if he ever thinks about that evening. Sometimes, she hopes he does. Not out of guilt, but because silence changed them both. And maybe that's enough. Across the city, Alexander Vale lives differently now. The empire is still his, but the noise inside it isn't. His office, once a cathedral of ego, feels human again. Laughter from interns, sunlight through half-open blinds. No more walls made of glass and fear. He's learning what it means to listen, to show up, not to impress, but to understand. People notice he talks less and hears more. He doesn't hide his past, he lets it remind him. He's not proud of who he was, but he's grateful for who he's becoming. Some mistakes ruin reputations, others rebuild souls. His somehow did both. When he looks at the city now, he doesn't see power, he sees people. And that, for the first time, feels like success. On a quiet afternoon, Ilara visits the community center, where Noah volunteers now. Children laugh in the courtyard, their joy echoing off brick walls painted with hope. A small plaque near the entrance catches her eye. The Ruiz Reading Room, sponsored by the Vale Foundation. She stands there for a moment, tracing the engraved letters with her fingertips. It doesn't feel like charity anymore. It feels like completion. Life has a way of closing circles when you least expect it. She doesn't tell Noah. She doesn't need to. Some victories aren't meant to be announced. They're meant to be lived quietly, like peace finding its home inside your chest. That evening, the city glows under a velvet sky. Ilara finishes her shift early and walks home, passing the same rooftop restaurant where it all began. Through the glass, she sees new faces, laughter, luxury. The same performance of wealth that once humiliated her. But now, it doesn't sting. It almost feels like watching an old movie whose ending she already knows. She smiles faintly, adjusts her coat, and keeps walking. Some stories don't need sequels. Some just need closure. And in that quiet with the city humming around her, she realizes she's already written hers. Weeks later, Alexander finds himself at the same restaurant again. Not for business, not for status, just dinner alone. The waiter brings water, the view glimmers, and he looks around, remembering. When Ilara walks by his table, still in uniform, still calm, they share a single nod. No words, no apologies, just quiet understanding. The city glows around them, loud as ever, but for a heartbeat, it feels still. The same silence that once burned between them now feels sacred. Redemption isn't about changing the world. It's about changing what kind of silence you leave behind. And in this one, there's peace.